If you just wrote a $40 million check for your own private jet, a Gulfstream fully paid, fully yours, then I have some bad news for you. You don't actually own a jet. You own a bill you haven't seen yet, because that check, that was the cheap part. That jet is now going to cost you somewhere between $3 and $5 million a year before you fly it a single mile. 2 full-time pilots on salary all year long for a plane that flies maybe 300 hours out of the roughly 8,700 hours in a year. A hangar to park it in, insurance, an engine program that bills you by the hour, and quietly in the background, depreciation. The plane shedding $1 million or more in value every year just sitting there. Fly at a normal amount, and within about a decade, you will have spent that entire $40 million purchase price all over again just keeping it in the air. A private jet, it turns out, is not a thing you buy. It is a money pit you feed. And if you fly it less than about 150 hours a year, which is almost everyone who owns one, that pit is about to swallow you. So the industry sells you a way out. You don't buy the whole jet, you buy a slice of one-sixteenth of a tail from a company like NetJets. On paper, it fixes everything, but that slice is not what you think it is. The company selling it to you makes its real money on the 15/16ths of that jet you will never fly. And by the end of this, you'll also meet the one company that tried to make private flying cheap for everyone and watched its own stock collapse from $10 to under a single dollar. Let me show you how it all works. Start with the thing that breaks every first-time owner's brain. The cost of a private jet has almost nothing to do with the price of the jet. The trap is this: almost every big cost is fixed, which means you pay it whether the plane flies 0 hours or 1,000. The biggest fixed cost is the crew. A jet needs 2 pilots minimum, and for a large cabin aircraft, the captain alone can earn well north of $300,000 a year, with the first officer on top of that. That is a salary you are paying in full while the plane sits in the hangar all February. And notice, you have not flown anywhere yet. The plane is already spending your money in its sleep. Then come the costs that scale with flying. Fuel is the big volatile one. Jet fuel in the United States has been running around $7.50 a gallon, and a large jet drinks it by the hundreds of gallons an hour. Maintenance is the sleeper. Engines get overhauled on a strict schedule, and a single engine overhaul can run past $500,000. For both engines, over $1 million. But the number that actually humbles people is depreciation. Take a real example, a large Gulfstream. All in, it costs roughly $4 million a year to own. And of that, nearly $1.7 million is nothing but the plane quietly losing market value as it ages. Let me say that again. On that one aircraft, the depreciation alone is larger than the entire yearly operating budget of a smaller light jet. The single most expensive thing about your jet is that it is slowly turning into a cheaper jet. And here is how slippery all of this is. Ask 2 honest experts what it costs to fly one of these big jets for a single hour, and one will tell you around $4,000 and the other will tell you closer to $11,500. They are both right. One is counting only the fuel and wear of the flight itself. The other is counting the crew, the hangar, the insurance, and the depreciation, spread across every hour you fly. That is the dirty little secret of this entire world. The true cost of a private jet is deliberately almost impossible to pin down, which, as you are about to see, is extremely convenient for the people selling it. Add it all up, and a rough rule of the industry is that owning a jet costs you somewhere around 10 to 15% of its value, all in every single year. On our $40 million jet, that is $4 to $6 million a year gone. Most of it whether you fly or not. Now, the honest math, and I want to be fair about it, if you fly a lot, 300 or 400 hours a year, and you need total control of your schedule, then buying outright genuinely can make sense. That is real. But if you are flying 50, 100, 150 hours, you are paying millions to own an asset that sits idle roughly 90% of the time. You are not really buying transportation. You are buying availability. and you are barely using it, which is the exact problem the entire fractional industry was invented to solve. In 1986, a former Goldman Sachs mathematician named Richard Santulli did something nobody had done before. He had bought a small jet company, and he sat down with 22 years of pilot logbooks and studied when and where people actually flew. And he realized you did not need to sell someone a whole jet. You could sell them a fraction of one and share the rest. He launched it with 8 Cessna citations and called it NetJets. It was the first fractional ownership program in history. So how does it actually work? You buy a share of a specific jet. The smallest slice is 1/16th, and that is not a marketing gimmick. 1/16th is the actual minimum share the government allows for an airplane, written directly into federal aviation regulation. That 1/16th buys you about 50 hours of flying a year. And you pay in 3 separate ways. First, the share itself. For a light jet, a 1/16th reportedly runs somewhere between $500,000 and $850,000. Though I have to flag that these companies keep their real prices under strict non-disclosure, so every figure out here is a third-party estimate. Second, a fixed monthly management fee anywhere from several thousand to tens of thousands of dollars a month, and you owe it whether you fly or not. And third, an occupied hourly rate, billed only when you are actually in the air. But this is where the whole deal quietly rewrites itself. You almost never fly the jet you own. This is not a loophole. It is built into federal law. The rules governing fractional ownership require what is called a dry lease exchange, which means every single owner in the program is legally required to lease their aircraft to every other owner. So when you call for your jet, the company does not send your tail number. It sends whichever identical class jet is closest and available. Your ownership guarantees you a category of cabin, not an airplane. And honestly, that is the good part for you. Because they are drawing from hundreds of interchangeable jets, they can guarantee you a plane on as little as 4 hours notice, almost anywhere in the country. You never have to wonder where your jet is, because your jet was always really the whole fleet. You bought guaranteed access to it, which sounds like a perfectly fair trade, until you look at what that fleet is actually doing. This next number is the entire business model, and almost no one who owns a share ever really sees it. Your 1/16th share flies about 50 hours a year, but the jet attached to that share, the operator flies it 1,000 to 1,200 hours a year across you and every other owner and everyone else pulling from the pool. Remember, a normal privately owned jet sits idle around 90% of the time. NetJets took that idle time, the dead unsold hours, and turned it into the product. That is the trick, and it has a name: utilization arbitrage. You pay for guaranteed access to a jet you personally use 50 hours a year. They keep that same airframe flying nearly around the clock for everyone else. The gap between what you use and what the plane earns, that gap is the business, and it compounds in 3 more ways. Number 1, buying power. NetJets does not buy jets one at a time the way you would. It places the single largest orders in the history of aviation. Recently, a deal for up to 1,500 Cessna citations worth around $30 billion. When you order 1,500 jets at once, you get a discount no individual human on Earth could ever touch. Number 2, the depreciation spread. You, the owner, bought your share near retail, and you eat the depreciation on a hard-flown airplane. NetJets buys wholesale in bulk and sits on both sides of that trade. And number 3, float. All those prepaid hours and jet cards, that is your cash sitting in their account before they have flown you anywhere. It is an interest-free loan you did not know you were giving them. Now, I want to be careful and fair here because this is not a scam. It is a genuinely useful service, and the company holds up its end. The jets are real, the availability is real, and you do hold title to a slice of one. Even Warren Buffett, whose company owns NetJets, describes it plainly. Modest margins in this business, he says, can still produce good returns. And the industry's own honest pitch is that you should not go buy a whole jet and let it rot in a hangar. They are right. That is genuinely terrible math. They are simply selling you the alternative guaranteed availability at a margin. You are not buying a plane. You are renting a seat in a very expensive, very well-run carpool. So who ends up on top of all this? Start with NetJets itself. In 1998, Richard Santulli sold the company to Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway for around $725 million. And the tell about how good this product is? Buffett did not buy it as a cold investment. He had been a paying customer for 3 years first. Today, NetJets flies the largest private fleet on the planet, roughly 800 fractional aircraft, and well over 1,000 when you count the planes it also manages. It is functionally the biggest air force in the world that no government controls. And even that giant nearly didn't survive. When the financial crisis hit in 2009, the ultra-rich abruptly stopped flying, and NetJets, the safest name in the business, lost hundreds of millions of dollars in a single year and was buried under billions in debt. Santulli, the founder, was gone. Buffett had to step in personally, clean house, and admit the buck stopped with him. Think about that. If the single best-run operator on Earth can get flattened the moment the flying slows down, that tells you everything about how brutal and unforgiving the fixed cost of a fleet really is. But the most instructive story here is not the winner. It is the company that tried to make it cheaper. Because private flying is really a ladder, and where you stand on it comes down to one thing: how much you actually fly. At the very bottom is charter, where you just rent a jet by the trip, like an extremely expensive taxi, and walk away owing nothing. One rung up is the jet card, where you prepay for a block of hours at a fixed rate. Above that is fractional, the equity share we have been dissecting this whole time. And at the very top is whole ownership, the full money pit, all yours. Every rung buys you a little more control, and charges you a lot more to sit still. And one company bet its entire future on a rung near the bottom. There is a tier that sits around the jet card called membership. Think of it like a Netflix subscription for jets. The big name was Wheels Up, and the pitch was seductive. Skip the giant capital outlay, skip owning a share, just pay a membership and buy your hours by the block. More accessible, more democratic. And for a while, Wall Street loved it. The stock went public and traded up around $10. Then reality arrived. Because here is the brutal truth the membership model slams into. Guaranteeing on-demand access to a fleet of jets is enormously expensive. And if you let people in cheaply without that big upfront commitment, the money coming in simply does not cover the fixed cost of all those planes sitting ready. Wheels Up bled cash. The stock collapsed from around $10 to under a single dollar, and it took an emergency rescue led by Delta Airlines just to keep it alive. And that is the quiet lesson of this entire industry. The cheaper and easier somebody makes private flying sound, the worse the underlying math usually is. NetJets works precisely because it does not make it cheap. It charges enough to cover the fleet, and then it keeps the arbitrage on top. The convenience is completely real. It is just never ever cheap. Somebody is always paying for all those jets to sit ready. And if you are the one being offered a deal that feels too good to be true, then that somebody is you. So step back and look at the whole machine. You can't afford a private jet, and it has nothing to do with the $40 million sticker price. The sticker was just the down payment on a decade of crew, fuel, and depreciation that costs you the entire plane all over again. And the solution the industry sells you, the fractional share, is not really ownership at all. It is a subscription to a fleet flying tails that were never yours, written so the operator always keeps the gap between what you use and what the plane earns. Which leads to the strangest truth in all of this. The single most exclusive symbol of wealth on Earth, the private jet, and even most of the people who own one really don't. They own a slice, a card, a membership. They rent access to the sky and call it ownership. Because buying the whole plane and eating the cost is a deal most billionaires are too smart to take, unless they are truly flying it constantly. So let me ask you honestly, if you had the money tomorrow, how many hours a year would you actually fly it? Because that single number is the whole game. It decides whether you are the rare person for whom owning makes sense, or just the next one quietly feeding the pit. Tell me your number down in the comments.